If you've been trying to master Sova, then you come to the right place, because in this video, I'm going to be breaking down one Sova tip versus every hero, so you're one step closer to mastering this insane playmaking agent. If you like Valorant content, do us a favor and smash that subscribe button. We're pumping out double daily uploads, trying our best here to give you every single ounce of content that we can muster. All that being said, enough talking, let's just jump right into it, shall we? Now, before we jump into every single character and how they line up against Sova, let's talk about some general tips that we have for you so you can have more impact on Sova right away. The first thing that you need to understand about Sova is that he's not a frontliner. He's a setup and enable. You want to lead the way with information with your recon or your drone and have allies follow behind and follow up on that information. Because of the nature of Sova's recon arrow, how it's on a cooldown, you don't necessarily want to be on the front line because you get multiple chances to use that ability to fish for value. You can potentially use it many times over the course of a round, whether you're on attack or defense, and if you're far too aggressive and die right off the bat, you're gonna leave a lot of your teammates completely blind on information, which could be really problematic if they ever want to rotate or later on in the fight if they ever want to stop a push. The best strat in general that I would 100% suggest with Sova is combo your information gathering with a playmaking ability, something like Phoenix's curveball or Breach's flash. If you need to build up that synergy, duoing with one of these characters is probably going to give you the best results, especially when ranked mode comes out this week. Now, on top of this, as a bonus tip before we go, the best way in my mind to use your ultimate to get value is fire your recon arrow where you 100% know where enemies are. The second you fire it away, you instantly activate your ultimate. When they get picked up on your recon, you can start firing at them right away, and you can usually get at least one kill with it. Another useful way of using your ultimate is you can actually retreat from a spike that you planted when the time is ticking down, and you can use your ultimate to kill someone that's trying to defuse a spike just because you could perfectly see where your ultimate's gonna hit. You can look on the minimap where the spike is and you can set it up perfectly. I played situations where all I had to do was stall for time, then I backed way away from the point. When the enemy went to defuse, I just ulted them, got a free round, didn't even have to take the 1v1. Now let's move on to the bread and butter, Sova versus every single hero, and of course we gotta kick it off with Sova versus Sova. Now, the best tip that I have for you against the Sova is sometimes, and actually often, it's better to wait for the enemy to use the recon first, especially if you're on defense. The reason is if they use it in a location, they're trying to gain information, and then you can counter use it to gain information as well and potentially halt a point push, because usually they want to sonic, get information, and then push a point using things like flash and curveball and things like that. Counter gaming information can help you make a plan for this, while on the flip side, if you're too aggressive when you're holding on defense, you're too aggressive with your recon arrow and enemies aren't even there, when you eventually have to rotate to the other point that they're attacking, your recon arrow is still going to be on cooldown and you're not going to have it to gain any precious information. So you pretty much get to always fire second with Sova, which is really nice, and it's something that you should really think about because you definitely don't want to just be wasting your recon arrow and then have to re-enter a point and waste precious time waiting for your cooldown to come online. Now moving on to the next character that has to go up against Sova is Cipher. While you can't necessarily counter Cipher's abilities, you can definitely counter his lurker playstyle, because that's typically what Ciphers are going to be doing. They're going to be lurking around on the flanks, holding multiple angles, rotating, things like that, because he can really hold far distances apart, especially with his camera. So this is what you want to do against a Cipher. After you use the first recon arrow and you secured information, you push onto a point, your second one will eventually come back online. You can use Sova's second recon arrow to check long flank routes or even send it through a teleporter in order to try to tag a lurking Cipher that's around. This way you can effectively isolate the areas of the map that the Cipher can come from and then change your positioning accordingly just to focus on those angles instead of having to focus on every single angle, because I know that when you're on a point, sometimes there's way too many places enemies could come from. Now, moving on to the next character on our list, we have Sova versus Jett. And Jett is a character that you always need to try to scout for and relay information about her when you see her instantly on site. Whether you tag her with your arrow or your recon drone, you need to consistently tell your teammates that there is a Jett on the site that you're pushing. Because Jett not only has fast repositioning, but vertical mobility, that means that she could come from unsuspecting places and she could be on top of boxes. So if you don't relay this to your allies, their crosshairs might not be in the proper positioning and they won't be checking the right places because a Jett could be easily hiding on top of a box. So you really need to relay that information as the information gatherer. You really need to relay that information to your team. Now moving on to the next character versus Sova is Phoenix. So against a Phoenix, there are two big things that you can do with your recon arrow to give you an advantage in this matchup and give you an advantage for your team. The first thing is you can use your recon on the other side of his LOS blocking firewall to gain information. This is awesome because you still get information. You can see if it's a fake out or if it's a push onto point. It's great to get that sort of information, and most of the time you're going to tag them because they won't have enough time to react to the recon arrow coming straight through. They're just pushing right onto point. Another thing that's actually really powerful against the Phoenix is if you get flash. Let's say you're holding an angle, you're near natural cover, and you get flash right around the corner. Everyone's instinct is to instantly back up behind natural cover, which of course you should do, but at the same time, whip out your sonic arrow and just tap it. Just tap it so that it just does the lowest powered shot. It's gonna basically plop right onto the floor, right? But the thing is, the Phoenix isn't gonna be looking at it in that second, because the second you see the flash, you're backing up and shooting out your sonic arrow. And when they peek around that corner to make a follow-up play on their flash, you will tag them all because their crosshair isn't gonna be on the ground. It's gonna be head level because they're trying to punish people that they potentially flashed. So what you can do is you see the flash, you instantly back up, tap your recon arrow, throw it on the ground. It's gonna tag everyone that peeks, and then you can potentially counter peek them after you get all that information, or you can relay it on your team, reposition, or do all kinds of stuff. It's actually a pretty cool strat that favorably trades resources and information with the enemy team, and it's even better because Phoenix only has 2 curveballs throughout a round, while your recon arrow is on a cooldown. So in reality, you're really trading resources quite favorably. Now, let's talk about the next hero, which is versus Sage. When up against a Sage, sometimes you can send your drone actually up and over her wall, basically to get information from behind the wall, because it also blocks LOS, line of sight. And while you have your drone over, your team can break the wall. This way you can relay to your team, hey, there's someone waiting for you behind the wall trying to kill you, or hey, they backed off. And oftentimes they will be forced to back off because then you automatically know that they're there, which is really important. So basically the second you throw out the drone, your team starts breaking the wall, and it could be a pretty good combo, good way to flush out and push through that wall. Now moving on to the next character that Silva's gonna versus, it's Omen. And Omen is a character that can be anywhere and can teleport even in his own smoke or across the map with his ultimate. This is what you should do every time you're up against an Omen, especially if you hear his ultimate. If you hear his ultimate, what you need to do is similar to the Cipher example, you need to be isolating the angles that he could come from. Oftentimes, Omens will teleport far into your spawn or up to heaven, the high ground on different maps. So what you should be doing is you should be trying to isolate those angles, throw your recon down, bounce them along walls, and put them exactly where you think the Omen might be going. And if it doesn't tag anyone and it doesn't get destroyed, you know that the Omen's not there, so then that's one less angle that you have to worry about. On top of this, if you manage to guess right and you do tag him, you can make a joint push with you and teammates to basically set up an unfair fight against the Omen and just kill him, get a free pick, waste his ultimate, and then go back to business as usual. Now moving on to the next character that Silva has to versus, it's Raze. Now, when Raze has her ultimate, which you can see before the round starts, it is extremely scary to joint push her or make any synchronized play. So what you should really be doing is just like with the Jett example, you need to be relaying to your team when a Raze is holding a certain point, and she needs to be a big priority target to tell to your team, hey, the Raze is holding this point. We really need to not synchronized push this point. If you can scout her out and relay her to your team, it makes it a lot easier for your team to play around, because honestly, sometimes you'll be pushing through a choke on, like, say, the right side or A or whatever. You see that there's a Raze there, and you're like, hey, we can quickly rotate to the other side, push through, take space on the point, to where Raze, if she rotates, she's gonna be far less effective on an open point than she is when we're pushing through a choke point. That's how you essentially use that information to play around a character's kit. And then on top of that, be really cautious about where you're throwing out your drone. When you throw out your drone, your body's immobile. You do not want to be killed due to her paint shells, because you're too close to a choke point when you use your drone. Now moving on to the next character that Silva has to versus, it's Viper. Now, Viper has a lot of LOS blocking abilities, but luckily for you, some of them can be circumvented with the recon arrow. Specifically her giant toxic gas wall, it's really good for pushing onto points and funneling teams through. But if you throw your recon arrow on the other side, you could tag a few enemies, and then you can find out, hey, this is just a debate push, or hey, this is the legitimate push and there's 3 or 4 enemies here. Everyone needs to rotate to this site. On top of that, your ultimate plus drone combo is one of the best ways to actually deal with her ultimate, Viper Pit. You can send your drone in, scout her out, find where she is, and then ult her on the spot. If you can kill her, you will destroy the Viper's Pit. It will go down, will give you an actual fair fight, because honestly, I don't like pushing into Viper's Pit. Do you? I don't think so. And if I can use my ultimate to just counteract hers, it's worth it in my book, especially if I get a kill out of the deal and even a round. Now moving on to the next character on our list, we have Sova versus Breach. Now, against Breach, there's not that much you could generally do besides relaying information to your team and doing the same thing that you did up against the Phoenix. You know, when you see the flash come out, you back up against LOS, you back up behind LOS, I mean natural cover, and then you just tap your recon. You try to gain that information, because remember, a lot of times in team play, these breaches and these Phoenixes are going to be enablers. They're going to be using their abilities to start a push or an initiation. So if you could back up and gain information at the same time, you can not only stop their push, but potentially punish them as well, which is really cool. Now, last but certainly not least, let's talk about Sova versus Brimstone. Now, Brimstone is the best LOS or line of sight blocking character in the entire game. His Sky Smoke is so good for pushing onto a point because he can block off many angles, making it really hard for you to know if they're actually pushing onto a point or if it's a trick or things like that. The best counter to Brimstone and that ability is actually Sova, because when a Brimstone invests multiple abilities into a point, you could instantly see, hey, this is where the enemies are pushing, and you could, one, maybe make a play on them through the smoke, or two, realize that your whole team needs to rotate to take a free, fair team fight. But you can also find out really quickly if, hey, this was just a bait, or you could force the enemies to reposition. They say, hey, they know where we are, let's reposition to a different site. Either way, you win in that exchange, because if the Brimstone already invested his Cloud Smoke, that's really good for you. You want him to invest his abilities as opposed to yours. You're comfortable trading your one recon arrow that's on a cooldown for his Cloud Smokes that he has to purchase. He gets one free per round, but if he uses like 2 or 3 in a point, you use your recon arrow to basically circumvent that or make him rotate with his team. That's all a win-win in your book. And that's why I think Brimstone's biggest counter and biggest problem is actually Sova. So if you like this guide, do me a big favor and smash the subscribe button, and definitely let me know, what character should I do next? I've done Sage, I've done Sova, I've done Jett. What's the next character? Do you want Cipher, maybe Breach, a little bit of Viper action? You got to let me know. And on top of that, if you want to see some insane Sova recon arrow spots, I know tons of them because I've been playing Sova nonstop. He is my main right now. He's probably what I'm going to be playing throughout the ranked mode if I can lock him fast enough. But if you want to see that, smash that like button and also let me know down below. Anyways, I know that this ending has rambled on a little bit too long, but that's all I got for you today. I'm Coach Smells, and until next time.